Welcome to the BC Perspective Podcast. We're up to episode 257, recorded on June 26, 2013. I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Alan Malventano.
And I'm Maury Titleman.
I'm glad that Alan got the flip down because, who knows in that 15 seconds when we're doing introductions when you're going to want to put that thing in there. No?
Right. On the other hand, he's muting what's going on around him, which might be a good thing.
For some strange reason, Ryan has still kept open that 1-888 number. So, you should probably call, talk to him about how much you like the ad-free site if you gave $100. How much you can't wait to feel the soft 50-50 cotton poly blend of the shirt that he will be sending you if you gave money in the Indiegogo. Or was it Indiegogo? Hello?
We went with Indiegogo.
Okay. But you can call us at 1-888-38-PC-PER. You can also come and view these lovely, lovely podcasts at pcper.com/podcast. Leave messages for Alan, Jeremy, and Maury, especially for Maury, talking about his dog. He likes to talk about his dog. You can follow Ryan on Twitter.
Ryan on Twitter and describe all of the great experiences you've had with Delta Airlines. He'll really appreciate it.
He will. He can commiserate with you. But, at least he's a member of that Platinum Club or whatever and gets free upgrades on flights that he can't connect to. Anyway. You can also follow PCPer on Twitter at twitter.com/PCPer. But since Ryan has, gone off to England to talk to Arm and drink a lot of that English ale and enjoy the sights and sounds of Cambridge, England, I'm renaming this the Josh Tech Podcast, and I'm now in control.
All right,
of
I'm
the vertical and the horizontal?
Yeah, pretty much. But anyway, we've got a ton of work to do in this podcast. In the next hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, maybe 3, because it is now JoshTech.com. So, Ken, are you around? Can you talk about this Mac Air 11-inch 2013 review from Windows Perspective?
So, should I pull an Alan here? Should I pull an Alan?
I don't know. Do you have something
It's
to
right
flip?
here.
Oh, hey, look, guys.
Oh, hi.
Well, I'm not Ryan Shroud also, so I'll get rid of that.
Don't drop it.
I'm not really quite sure what to say here about this machine. It hasn't changed all that much besides the Haswell guts.
And besides, running all day long.
Well,
Yeah, what's the battery life on that?
not good under Windows. That's what it is. So, well, if the camera would switch.
Yes, you do. I don't have an error to show you.
Okay. XSplit.
No,
There we go.
there it goes.
So when I got this last week before, I guess it's been 2 weeks at this point, the first thing I did was take it to the office, tore it open, took some pictures of the inside, checked out the new PCI Express SSD that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and then I installed Windows on it, which kind of goes against what I do with my MacBook, but I wanted to see what the state of Boot Camp was like. So I got Windows on it, and then I installed the Boot Camp driver pack, which actually I was surprised to find had the drivers for everything on a day-old machine, including the Broadcom 802.11 AC drivers, which I still haven't been able to test the AC radio because I don't have an AC router, but I'll get to that at some point. All of the support really seemed to be there from the start on Windows until I did a battery test. And actually, let me pull up the chart here.
Ken, there was something with the settings that you put, like what profile you use in Windows, and what power saving states Windows will then tell the CPU to do. Like I know that with the Intel, core-based CPUs, if you want them to actually clock themselves down, you have to have your power state to something. Like I forget which one it is. Obviously, it's not high performance, but it had to be like some middle or low setting would make it then, when it was idle, it would actually back off on the clock on the CPU. I don't know. I'm just sort of throwing that out there. I don't know if that's going to apply the same way to what you were doing. Like I believe the default, like if you left it at the default, I think that it would not clock it back at all. Like it wouldn't necessarily turbo, but it wouldn't go to the much lower power states. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a good point. When the Apple bundle included the Haswell chipset drivers, and off of that, we figured we just adjusted the balance profile in Windows 8.
Yeah, it was like I think that might have been it. But even with that one, it still didn't do it.
Well, if we look at the numbers, you see on the top we have the score in OS 10, which was 700 minutes, and then 315 under Windows, which is obviously a little over half, or a little less than half. And we haven't really been able to find a reason, to be honest. We made sure the chipset drivers are on the latest. I mean, default Windows 8 should really support what Intel is putting out there. I mean, it was fully patched Windows 8, balance profiles, power profile. I'm just not really sure what Apple's doing on their end to get so much better battery life under OS 10 as opposed to what they're not supporting in Windows.
Whatever it is, I have a feeling it's eventually going to trickle into Windows.
Well, yeah. I wonder, I mean, Apple's historically done a lot of weird hardware tweaks, especially in the iPhone, to get a lot of battery life out of it compared to other phones, the Android phones, of course. Maybe they're doing the same thing. I mean, that's they're known for doing those backdoor, behind the scenes type tricks to get every little ounce of power. And if that's the case, and it's something a BIOS thing or some other type of hardware thing, and it's not software drivers, then we may never see that on Windows. That's unless they want to port it.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily hold my breath for the proper support under Windows for whatever's going on, but I have to, there are Haswell Ultrabooks running Windows that are coming out or being announced at this battery life level. So it's obviously possible and fairly easy with I doubt Samsung or Lenovo or anyone's doing something super special other than just implementing Intel's recommendations for the C6 and C7 power states and all of that.
Well, I mean, other than a few, if it had the standard Haswell driver for the Windows side in there, I mean, there's not other than the UEFI BIOS. There's not a lot of difference.
I think Boot Camp may still be emulating a BIOS instead of doing direct UEFI support. I'm not quite sure on that. I didn't look too far into that, so maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, that might be.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they haven't implemented the C6 and C7 power states correctly, that would eat your battery power quite a bit. I mean, because that's something Lenovo and all the other PC manufacturers are going to leverage heavily, because that's what Haswell was made to do for laptops. So,
yeah. Other than that, we did some basic CPU performance. It's about the same as Ivory Bridge, ultra low voltage parts. GPU performance is to come, really. I think there's a frame rating article we're doing on integrating graphics that isn't out yet. That hasn't launched, has it? Anyone?
What is it, the 5000?
Yeah, it's
HD 5000 in that?
Yeah, it's the HD 5000 in this machine, which isn't Iris. It isn't Iris Pro. It isn't any of that cool stuff with the
L4 cache.
Yeah, the L4 on there. So a little bit better performance than HD 4000. And I was actually surprised to find, as a package, the ULT part combined with the HD 5000 performed better than a 2600K, which obviously is a couple generations old, and the GPU wasn't very good. But it's something, I guess, in gaming.
Yeah, I mean, progress is progress, and it's nice that Intel finally figured out that people want good graphics and be able to play their Bubblegum Saga at high resolution. No, wait, you don't need 3D for that.
Oh.
Just Facebook account.
Oh, the way I play it is 3D.
On my LSD.
But yeah, it makes us excited to see more Haswell Ultrabooks come in. The battery life could be a real determining factor for a lot of people, I think, of whether they pick up an Ultrabook versus a standard voltage laptop. I mean, if they can go all day with an Ultrabook, maybe it works for some people.
Very nice. Well, if you're an Apple fanatic, or at least just an enthusiast. Seems like this is a nice little upgrade from previous generation, and especially that battery performance. It's kind of cool under Mac OS X.
Did not.
What?
Sorry, my video just cut out again.
It cut out right on you. And the storage subsystem. That's kind of insane for a small little, one thin little wafer.
It does seem really overkill because, I think you'd have a hard time taxing what was in the previous generation.
Wait.
From
Alan
what?
is saying that storage speed is overkill.
Basically, Alan's just sitting there shaking his
for the
head
platform
and says,
that it's in.
happily, excess is never enough.
That's the thing. It's like a low power device. You know what I mean? So it's just like, it's like, where are you going to put 800 meg per second, even if you're getting it? Like, where's it? You got to get it from somewhere in order to write it at that rate. So
It's got a Thunderbolt port, yo.
Well, yeah.
When I transfer data from my old MacBook Air to my new MacBook Air, I actually use Target Disk Mode under OS X, which allows you to just connect a Thunderbolt cable between the two of them. And then the old machine I turned into a host, and it just mounted on the old one. Obviously,
Right,
I was limited by the read speed of the SATA 3 gigabit SSD in the old Air, but still, it was impressive how fast.
So what's
I
the
could copy data
capacity?
over.
Like 128 gig?
I have a 256. You can go up to 512, I think.
Okay, so 256, you can't do that for more than like 4 minutes.
Yeah, but
And then what? It all
You do it for
explodes?
4 minutes, you have either filled it up or read everything.
Read all the things.
Yeah.
Oh.
hey man, storage is never going to be a bottleneck.
I mean, that
for me.
is cool. That is cool that you can completely empty
it's
out
not.
the thing or fill it up all the way in 4 minutes. That is pretty sweet,
I'm sure part of it is that these manufacturers are making these controllers for M.2. They're on the market. They just changed the connector to a proprietary thing, and this is kind of a beta test for.
No, it looks like a standard M.2.
Aren't there 2 keys in an M.2?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
only 1 key in that.
Oh, freaking Apple had to be different again.
Of course.
Of course
Oh,
it
yeah.
did. Think different.
Think
Anyway.
proprietary.
Moving on. Jeremy, you've got to tell us all about the Lenovo IdeaPad Yoga 11, because I know, looking at
Yoga
your
11.
hair and that Afghan behind you, you practice yoga on a daily basis.
But at least mental yoga. I just did some right there. Well, okay, so Ken has something that the battery life on it is decent, but how would you like to trade off some performance for a battery life that will last 10 hours plus in standard usage, and if you drop the brightness down on the screen, over 20 hours? The Yoga 11
break its
is
back.
the Windows RT version.
It'll scream
what
when
we've
you
already
do it.
seen the Yoga 11S and previous versions coming out from Lenovo.
So you just said it's like useless almost.
Hmm?
Or the RT version?
Yes, it is.
I don't know.
Hey,
you
you'll
like
get a free
RT?
copy of Office with it. When 8.1 comes out, Exchange will actually work for a change.
Okay.
Well,
But, like, on the other hand, for any of the benchmarks that were run, well, we were using SunSpider and various other browser tests, and in some cases it did fairly well. In others, it came in actually slower than many phones that are on the market nowadays. So for bare specs, you got a Tegra 3 1.2 gigahertz processor, and of course a Tegra GeForce ULP paired with that, 2 gigs DDR3, a 64 gigabyte SSD, and not a single fan in the thing. In fact, not a single moving part, apart from the heavily reinforced hinge on the machine. So it really is very low power. It is honestly also very low performance. But at the same time, I mean, it's just under $600. And if what you're looking for is something that's ridiculously ultra portable, under 3 pounds, just under an inch thick, this is not bad. And like I said, you are going to get a free, with Windows 8.1, you'll get a free Office, because the assumption is this is what you carry around. You have a full machine in the office. This one is your backup machine. So, you more or less have a license already. So it's sort of interesting to see, who is going to end up with this, because, it doesn't have a dock. It is permanently attached to the keyboard. On the other hand, it is a touchscreen, a measly 1366 or 1368 touchscreen, but a touchscreen nonetheless. On the other hand, because it's so thin, you have no VGA or VGA out. You've got no Ethernet out. In fact, they've just stuck with USB 2.0. You got a pair of those, HDMI, and an SD card reader. So honestly, if you pick this up expecting to get a full-fledged machine, you're going to be vastly disappointed. If you want a tablet that's going to function more or less as a work machine on the road, especially if you use RDP or something like that, to get to a machine that actually can do something and need it to last for 10 hours plus, it's not actually that bad of a deal. Now, honestly, like Al says, I'm not really a big fan of WinRT anyways, but for what the functionality of this machine seems to be designed to do, it's almost perfect. It's going to last forever. It's going to give you a Windows-based experience. And honestly, do you care what the benchmarks come out as if you're looking at 20 hours plus with a dim screen?
It's going to need 20 hours if you try to fill up or empty that drive through a USB 2 port.
What was that? You're both talking out over each other.
Sorry. It's going to need more running time if you try to fill or empty that drive through a USB 2.0 port, and that's the fastest you've got.
Oh God, yeah. Do that plugged in.
Oh, USB 2 isn't going to be your bottleneck there because it's probably eMMC memory.
Which I think is
not in real SSD.
Isn't that still quicker in a straight line than USB 2?
It's what, 24 or 25 megabyte per second?
Yeah, it's like 30 if you're lucky.
You'd probably be getting close.
Well, like I say, if you hate this, just wait. The Yoga 11S will probably be reviewed not too long from now. That is an Ivy Bridge chipset, so it's not going to last quite as long as, say, a brand new Haswell-based, but they aren't out yet. So if you need a full machine, it's worth waiting for that one. If you just need something that's basically usable and is going to last for forever, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, and you can skip it across the lake really, really nicely. It's got a good firm heft to it. The one thing that I was really pissed about Microsoft for quite a few years is their lack of support and marketing for Windows XP 64. That was probably one of their better operating systems of all time. And I wonder if, Windows RT, just because it doesn't have the application support, if it's still not a pretty decent OS. I don't know. Your thoughts on that, guys?
It depends. For a tablet OS, maybe. Not for a full-blown OS, it's gonna be underpowered. I mean, if you're looking to do heavy Excel stuff, heavy Word stuff, business apps, you're gonna be hurting. I mean, especially because the machines are crippled because of the hard drive space as well. I mean, you got a 64 gig hard drive usually at most in them. Some of them maybe have a little bigger than that. But as a tablet, it's not bad. The one thing with Yoga that kind of irks me, though, is the keyboard thing. When you fold it over to tablet mode, keyboard's sitting on the bottom fully exposed. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're pounding on the tablet, you're accidentally hitting a bunch of keys, too.
Well,
it disables the keyboard. It's just that the fact is that the keys are exposed, so you're pounding on the tablet and the keys are getting rubbed up against whatever you got the tablet sitting on, whether it's your hand, the
crumbs,
pavement,
dog hair, orange
whatever.
balls.
Yeah, it's a good way to wear it out. If you are looking for a tablet or an RT machine, I did hear of a good deal last week on Windows Weekly. Supposedly Microsoft is trying to fire sale off the 32 gig Surface RTs for $199 if you have access to a student discount account. So something to look into.
Nice. Well, moving along now, Alan, we finally get to hear from you. You who have been racing around the woodlands of Texas with some unknown female in a bright orange car.
Yes, that was fun.
Yes. Well, why don't you tell us about what you reviewed?
Okay, so we figured it was high time to do a roundup of all of the various Intel Enterprise SSDs. And I figured that because the amount of them that we had ended up just making a nice number for a roundup, basically. So took the X25E, figured we'd start all the way back at the beginning, and then worked our way all the way up through SSD 320, which was enterprise rated, even though it was both an enterprise and a consumer drive. Then the 710, the 910, which was the PCI Express board that came out, and then the two new data center edition SSDs, which is Data Center S3500 and S3700. So we took all those guys, we stuck them all together, did the similar kind of round of testing on them. I've actually got another extended new benchmark that I'm still working on that's going to be designed more for enterprise than for consumer. And this same batch is going through that testing as well. So there's probably going to be a follow-on piece with those same handful of drives as well as a bunch of other ones in it. But for now, this is what we've got. So we put all these drives together and just try to figure out what's what. So what was interesting here was that Intel, I don't know if any of you guys remember, but they sort of took forever to release their own controller that supported 6 gigabit anything, for that matter.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah, it took them way too long, right? They did some stopgaps with the SSD 510 and 520. That was Marvell and Sandforce, respectively. So they were just sort of borrowing stuff, but those were not enterprise rated. The 910 was their closest stab at an enterprise rated unit, but that was an LSI controller on a PCI Express card driving Hitachi, I believe, SAS SSDs, and they weren't really that great. They were good for consistency, but they just weren't that fast in general. So if you look at the comparisons here, first of all, if you go through just something as simple as a file copy test, which is just a batch, it's probably the most simple. You're just reading and writing a bunch of stuff to the SSD. The 910 actually didn't do that great. It was sort of, it was fast, but it was just sort of mediocre-ish.
How does that compare to the Revo drives from OCZ?
Well, here's the thing. With the 910, we only tested one of the 4 units, logical units, that are on the drive. The way it works is an LSI controller with 4 SCSI LUNs connected to the 4 respective SSDs. Well, to sort of make it on even footing, because if you're looking at this review to figure out, okay, I'm either looking at buying this SSD 910 that has 4 units to it, or I'm looking at buying, most likely that same person is going to compare that with buying, say, 2 or 4 of some of the other SSDs individually and doing the RAID, be it through Windows or through Intel or whatever they're going to RAID it with, right? With the SSD 910, you are forced to do Windows RAID because they're SCSI LUNs and the LSI chip. The Intel decided to rip the option ROM out that would normally let that card do RAID in hardware. I have no idea why, but they just did that.
And they're referring to it as an enterprise drive.
Yeah, that's what the 910 was. It was sold as primarily an enterprise unit.
Okay.
This is when we had.
I know, it was weird. That's the one that I was complaining about. Yeah, I know. I was complaining about it when it first came out. This was like last year when we first looked at it. And my primary gripe was, if you spent this much money on one of those units, you might want it as all one big drive that you could actually boot off of. Say if you were going to have like a huge number of these installed, you might just want to make one unit as a whole your OS drive, but you can't. You're forced to make just one of the SCSI LUNs, which is only 200 gig, and 1/4 of the capacity and the performance of that device. You're sort of forced to segregate it that way. So since Intel forces you to do that, I chose to review one of those 4, not all 4 together, right? Which is good because you may very well RAID 4 of something like the Data Center 3700. You might just buy 4 of those and RAID those together in contrast with the 910, right? So to keep it on the level, that's how we compared them all. Let's see, what's the good... Well, the best page to go to is the IOs per second, the IO meter one.
Iometer. Do.
Yeah, where's
Iometer. Do.
Ken, push the buttons. Okay, there you go. All right, so right off the bat, the old X25E, mixed workloads, it was never really that fast, even though it has SLC flash, and it's actually the only one in this group that has SLC flash, believe it or not. But very, very old tech. right? So it's just bottom of the barrel. Not only that, but that we couldn't test it out to Q depths greater than 32 because it actually like broke, like it would crash and like disappear. And yeah, I don't know. It's an old drive, so we'll put it out to pasture, after we do this testing. But what was interesting is the 910, since it's a different kind of controller and it just seems higher latency. So if you look at the lower Q depths, that's the green line on those graphs. It starts out really, really low, and it does eventually ramp up, but it only ramps up to match the drives that are actually only transferring at 3 gigabits per second anyway. So, and it very rarely exceeds that. It sort of clips past it on the web server, but only when you really get into the super high Q depths. So again, the 910 is sort of like, yeah, it's okay, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's worth the money anymore for an enterprise application. And I say that because now there are these 2 new data center units. So let's just talk for a minute about those. You have the data center, the S3700, which came out last year, and the S3500, which is actually the newer model, even though it's a lower number, came out and launched, I believe it was last week was the launch date. I think so, sometime in the middle of last week or late the week before. So the S3700 is 25 nanometer flash. It's the standard, basically Intel's high endurance technology flash memory. It's like better binning. It's like higher grade 25 nanometer flash. It's the same kind of IMFT 25 nanometer that's been in like darn near everything, right? It's just all over the place by now. There's actually a wafer of it sitting like back there. So that's that same stuff, 25 nanometer. When they launched it, they pushed it hard, and they've been making it ever since. The S3500, similar controller, similar layout. Actually, Ken's got a drawing up showing the 2 PCBs right next to each other. They basically look identical. The difference is it's 20 nanometer flash, and it's a newer revision of everything basically, because it's almost a year has passed since the 3700 launched. So they've made some other optimizations to the controller and just sort of squeaked a little bit more performance out of it. And if you look at the IOmeter results of that, you can actually see maybe within just a couple of percent, the S3500 actually squeaks by a little faster than the 3700. They're probably going to even that up with firmware updates for, once they update the 3700 somewhere down the line. They'll probably push out an update firmware to improve the performance and match those two up. But the big deal for now is that while the S3700 was still kind of a pricey drive because it was 25 nanometer flash and there's a lot of over provisioning in it, and you have to, you're sort of paying for more flash than you're actually getting access to, and that sort of thing. And it's 25 nanometer compared with 20 nanometer, which gives you much more bang for your buck as far as how much flash, how much storage you're getting compared to how much of the space on the wafer they're taking up in production, right? So they can sell that stuff for much cheaper.
But how about provisioning on those 20 nanometer drives? It's going to be a bit larger to meet the what do you call it? How long last drives? The drive lasts.
So that's the issue, is the longevity, right? And Intel is actually only rating them for a little bit less than 1,000 full drive writes worth. That's their actual rating in the specs. So it's I put the actual numbers towards the end of the piece, but it was like somewhere around 500, 600 full drive writes. And I realize you're getting a pretty big drive here, so like 480 gig, right? And when you consider that they're shooting for prices that are close to $1 a gig. Now, this is an enterprise drive that has, pretty good rating for 4K random writes and, really, really good performance overall, and rated for enterprise use and has capacitors on board so it can, gracefully deal with power loss and all these other bells and whistles for enterprise stuff at close to $1 a gig, which is what consumer drives are selling for right now. I think one of the prices worked out to like $1.20 a gig. So assuming they can actually stick with that MSRP in the enterprise sector, I'm assuming that they're only going to hit that price if you're an enterprise customer and you're buying like 1,000 of them at a pop or something like that. But still, that's really, really cheap, right? And and they do advertise the 3500 series as being, yes, it can handle enterprise use, but they're expecting it to be more for like VMs, and you have a huge amount of these in an array, and it's handling VM type use, which is going to be probably more reads than writes most of the time. But if you're trying to have a VMware data cluster, data center cluster of storage, you need to be really fast. You need to be at least solid state if you want really good performance out of it, especially for VMs. VMware stuff loves solid state compared to spinning disks. So the more of it you can get on solid state, the better. So the idea here is, what is the cheapest possible way to get the most amount of solid state storage? And that's what the S3500 series appears to be what Intel is shooting for. And they really are undercutting everybody else. Like every other enterprise-based SSD is going to be orders of magnitude more expensive per gigabyte than these. So once again, Intel has done the thing they usually do every couple of years. They come out and they just undercut everybody else and piss off a bunch of people. But then everybody else has to bring their prices down. So then that makes the storage guy happy, because then he can, push SSDs more. There's less of an excuse not to get one. If the 3500s actually show up on Newegg and the like for cheap enough, I think power users might go for them as well.
Very nice.
Really.
Just quick, how does it compare to like the latest vectors from OCZ?
They're actually on par with the Vector. I put Samsung 840 Pro in the mix just to put some kind of a baseline consumer-ish kind of drive in there. The one thing we didn't test, though, that would show a much larger difference between, say, the Samsung and the Intel Enterprise drives is if you hit it with a continuous 4K random write for like hours, which, granted, not much of a consumer kind of use, but that would definitely show the enterprise drives wiping the floor with any of the consumer drives, because consumer drives just can't keep that up. They trade off higher response time on random writes for the long term. They don't expect a user to fill the drive front to back with random 4 kilobyte writing, whereas these drives are designed to handle that kind of a workload. They're assuming you have like a database is doing 4 or 8K random writes across the full span of the drive continuously, and they can handle that.
Very nice. Well, let's move away from SSDs and STDs, because they're both kind of uncomfortable when inserted improperly. So, Ryan, he reviewed a brand new card from NVIDIA. It's the GTX 760. Yes, we have another refresh of the venerable GK104 chip that was originally introduced with the GTX 680 almost a year and a half ago. So this little number that Ryan went over has got 1,152 CUDA cores, 96 texture units, 32 ROPs. So it's a slightly detuned GK104. It runs at 980 megahertz base clock, 1033 boost, and the big kicker on this, it's being sold for $250 essentially. So you're getting a 2 gig card that has a GK104 that was powering not just the GTX 680, 670, but also the new GTX 770. And you have less CUDA cores, but the performance is not that bad. Essentially, I believe 2 SMX units are being disabled in this. And you've still got either 3 to 4 GPCs. Apparently, there's a not a huge hit in between going between 4 and 3 GPCs. It's a 192-bit memory controller, and the performance, well, it's pretty darn good for being a $249.99 video card. Performance is not that far off from the older GTX 670. When you compare it to other products in its class, namely the HD 7870 and the HD 7950, it pretty handily beats both of those cards, especially the HD 7870, which was kind of a favorite of many folks because low power consumption, really good performance, nice sized frame buffer, but it's only about $30 less expensive than this particular product. Then you have the HD 7950, which is around $40 more expensive, but it is really on par with that, and only in a handful of applications which really like the larger memory size of the 7950, which is 3 gigs. Does that particular part ever really surpass the GTX 760 in overall performance? And that's only at higher resolutions, and again, games that really like a lot of video memory. So Ryan did some frame rating on this. Performance is very good across the board. There are no issues. SLI performance is, of course, a big step up from what AMD is able to provide for Crossfire. So this brand new card, it's out in force. I mean, it seems like GK104, as we have said before, is this generation's GTX 8800. Remember back in those days, the 8800 went to become the GTX 9800. The GTX 250, we just can't even count the parts that we are seeing coming out of this chip. NVIDIA certainly
Poor
has done
chips
well.
that looked like a piece of luggage that had been around the world. There were so many stickers on it by the end.
Yeah, and this is certainly, they have changed the performance of it. They're obviously getting very good yields on it. They can segment the products into as many as they want, and they're not losing a whole lot of money off of it at all. Their margins are still very, very, very high. So they're doing well with this. And better yet, consumers are going to be doing well with this because it's a very inexpensive part when you consider its performance, not just against what AMD has, but what previously was been offered by NVIDIA. So again, this is very close in performance to a GTX 670. It's smoking a GTX 660 Ti. And I believe that NVIDIA will only be offering the GTX 660 and below after this. So the GTX 760 is going to take over a lot of those, mid-range SKUs in between 249 and 300, depending on what the add-in card makers decide to add to the mix. But it seems like it's a pretty fantastic little card for the price, and some people are a little disappointed in it, but yeah, it's not new technology. It's still that same old GK104 chip, but it's packaged a little differently, and it certainly is priced a little differently, and it performs really, really well across a wide variety of applications, except when you come to OpenCL stuff. But we're going to probably get into that next week. When I talk about a review of budget cards that I am currently writing about. Any of you guys read over the GTX 760? What are some of your thoughts, Jeremy?
Well, it's definitely going to knock the 7870 off. I just updated the leaderboard fairly recently, which I'm going to mention later on, and slapped one of your favorites, the Double D edition, up there. It's gone. Sorry, for an extra $30, $40, this card is so much better performing. It really is, and it also offers you the chance to double up. And for $500, the scaling that Ryan was seeing was more than impressive. It was not 20 or 30%. It was upwards of 70 some of the time.
Yeah, I think that's gonna they're gonna cannibalize some of their sales because of that. People like me who just upgraded to a 670 last year. Now they just came out with the 760 a year later that is half the price of what I paid and performs better. And the kicker there is I can't SLI them. That's it. I think it's going to be. It's not going to work against them too much, but they're going to make some people mad. It'd be nice if they actually would open that up, that you could buy another one, put in SLI with a 670, and they're not going to lose anything doing that. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that either.
Yeah.
So I got a question here. That's
software issue with that, but go ahead.
I have a question that's
Alan.
not easily identifiable from the way we laid out the charts in this piece. Is how does that card directly compare to a 680?
It's got two SMXs disabled, so it's 1130 what? Numbers.
38?
1152 as compared to 1536, I believe, with the GTX 680. So you
Okay.
are going to lose some performance. I believe that you're going to lose a few texture units because you're disabling one of the memory controllers. So it's 192-bit versus 256-bit, even though it's running at 6 to 7 gigahertz for the memory, or gigabit per second, however you'd like to talk about that. So yeah, the performance is going to be less. And again, the GTX 770 is essentially identical, a little bit faster to the GTX 680. And
Okay.
there's a pretty good chunk of performance difference between the 770 and the 760.
But I mean, it's clearly not. The card's roughly half the cost of something like a 680, and the performance is definitely not half. I mean, it's
Well,
You
it's
know.
what's $399 versus $249, and you're looking at maybe about a 20 to 30% increase in overall performance.
yeah.
Yeah, you've got a good point there. I mean, price performance, it's an outstanding value, the 760, and I don't think anybody's really arguing that.
No, it's
But
good.
yeah, they not only are undercutting their competition, but they're kind of undercutting themselves, as you've mentioned.
Yep.
Very nice. Well, enough video cards because we're going to be talking about those seemingly ad nauseum throughout the fall. So, Maury, we brought you on for just one special reason. It wasn't to chide you about chasing the dog around the yard. It was to talk about the Asus Z87 Pro, which you reviewed because you're the motherboard guy. If he's
Yeah.
there.
The Z87 Pro is kind of Asus's mid-range of their what they call the channel line. It's basically their mainstream line. The difference really between the channel line and the other lines is the coloration. I mean, what feature-wise, it's not much different than the ROG line or the Tough line. Each line has their own specific details. Tough tends to have the thermal armor stuff on it, and ROG has their unique stuff. It does not have AC. It does come with an 802.11n. You can see the wireless module integrated into the rear panel is not removable. That is soldered on the board, but it is a dual port. It is a dual port wireless, and it does have the Asus enhanced antenna with it, which is nice. It's a directional antenna, and you can either put it upright in the upright mode like it is there, or you can lie it down flat. It's supposed to increase performance. I have not done testing with that yet. We will be doing testing with the Asus, with the new Asus antenna design in upcoming reviews. So watch for that. The board performed really good, and the coloration is kind of weird. It is very gold. I mean, it's not quite as bad as the ECS Golden Dragon board, but
It doesn't have the dust protection, does it?
No, it doesn't have dust
That's
protection.
a check
so.
mark against Asus.
Yeah.
But you could hang it around your neck.
Yeah. Kanye West could probably show up with that around his neck at the Oscars or Grammys.
It comes with a complimentary bottle of Purple Drink.
It does have, the nice thing is it does have the Intel NIC on it. Intel, most of the Asus boards and some of the other manufacturer boards are coming with the new generation of the Intel NICs. It's the i217V. I'm not sure if that's a server class NIC or not, but it is the newer generation of the newer refresh of the Intel NIC spec. It's got a nice amount of SATA ports on it. It's got 8 SATA ports. 6 of them are controlled by the controller. 2 of them are AS Media, I believe. Yeah, they're all 6 gigabit. It does not have an M-SATA on it. It does have 12 power phases, which is nice. Which is also is kind of odd because this is a mid-range channel board. It's got 12 power phases for the CPU, whereas the high-end ROG boards only have 8 power phases. So, riddle me that. I mean, according to ASUS and things I've been looking at, supposedly power phases aren't really necessary, but it still begs the question: why would they include 12 power phases on a lower end board than on the higher end board? They are, they're using the same heatsink designs across the boards. If you look at this, you look at the Extreme board, the VRM heatsink design and the chipset heatsink design are similar. So that's a nice thing. The board layout is clean from what we come to expect from ASUS. It's only got a single ATX 12 volt connector, but you don't need much more than that, probably. All in all, it's a decent board. I mean, it's a good value. It's somewhere, you can probably find them somewhere between 180 and 220. I think the list price on it was 210. So, I mean, they're pricing it to compete with the MSI gaming board, the MSI M-Power, and the mid-range gigabit boards. So,
what kind of MOSFETs, chokes, and whatnot are they using? Usually, ASUS is pretty anal about their capacitor choice of components. And even though that's only 12 phases compared to the insane 24 or 32 phases that we have seen in previous boards, how would you consider the components that they're actually including there?
Well, the components they're using, supposedly they're using the same level components across all their lines. So I'm not positive about this, but I believe that they are using the International Rectifier VRMs and components on it. But again, if you look at other manufacturers, most manufacturers on their mid-range and higher-end boards are using higher quality components on them. So that's not so much a differentiating factor anymore. It's almost become a must-have, or not necessarily a must-have, but a good to have, because that's what the competition is doing. It is nice that they are using the higher-end components on that, because you don't have to worry about the board blowing up on you or whatnot. But I mean, they're not. The big difference is on the components is they are not using the black capacitors. That's become popular on the higher end boards. You see them on the M-Power. You may see it on the MSI gaming board. You definitely see it on the ROG boards where they use the black capacitors that are rated at 10,000 hours or something like that. I mean, basically, they'll outlive you. But I believe they are using the International Rectifier chokes and VRM, so it is high quality stuff.
Good stuff.
And even though the caps are not the black capacitors, they are the Japanese solid state capacitors. Or the solid caps. So, theoretically they shouldn't leak or blow up on you.
Well, that's good.
And this favorites thing in the BIOS is becoming a thing, right?
The favorites thing?
Yeah. This is among some of the boards that I've seen you come out with on the Z87, that you can build a favorites page on your UEFI BIOS now?
Yes, yeah. The ASUS, actually, there's two things with that. They have a My Favorites page, and they also have a shortcuts menu. The My Favorites page allows you to basically tag. You can right-click any option in the BIOS and tag it to put it into My Favorites. It doesn't really allow grouping or anything. Basically, once you put it in there, it's in there according to whatever collation method they use to sort the options. You don't really have control of that, but you can basically just tag options that you use a lot. The other thing is the shortcuts menu, and that's basically that's a right-click menu. It allows you to tag menus and submenus to put it in shortcuts, and you can see it there in the screenshot. Both options together are very nice. The one functionality that it does kind of do away with, though, is the right-click to go back. In the UEFI BIOS, when they introduced it at first, you could right-click on any submenu, and it would always take you to the top-level menu. because of what they've done with the BIOS with this favorites and shortcuts menu, it kind of negates that functionality. This is not a big change. I mean, it's not a big loss, really. It's just something to be aware of.
Yeah, because when you right-click, it clears the BIOS.
Hey, I like that one.
No, it doesn't. If it's doing that, Josh, you're doing something wrong.
That'd be a great feature, though. You know, I don't like these settings. Right-click. Bang.
No.
Moving on to news.
One other thing I want to mention about the BIOS.
One other thing.
Sorry.
Come on, tell us about it quickly.
Yes. They did institute a changelog with the BIOS. Whenever you make changes and you go to save, it will pop up a changelog window that you can basically review all the changes you made, and you actually have the option of going back in without saving if you want. It's not a big deal, but it's kind of nice to have. I like to see stuff like that because you can actually, if you want, you can actually review the changes, and because sometimes the BIOS will make screwy changes and you don't know what it's doing. This changelog thing gives you just an added layer of protection.
And to think that I'm still holding onto a PS2 keyboard because I'm used to BIOSes not accepting USB whatsoever.
Wow, you're really old, even though you're younger than me.
So are you.
Yeah, but at least I show it. Moving along. So, Jeremy, what is new with the hardware leaderboard? We touched upon it earlier with the GTX 760, but please expound in the most Canadian way possible.
It's been a long time since we've seen a lot of movement on the leaderboard. Trinity has been sticking around for a long time, but now we have Richland. Haswell has suddenly appeared. For the high end, the 4770K is finally gone. It's actually been replaced by the 3770K is gone. It's been replaced by the 4770K, which is essentially the same processor. But, for the most part, it's actually nice to see a nice refresh. The low end, the mid-range, and the high end are the ones that always see the most movement because the Dream System, well, we haven't been seeing many dualies come out. We haven't been seeing any sort of a refresh to the Dash E series that all the people with a lot of money really love. But it's nice to see, we've got the low end, which is coming in just under $500, which you can go sort of two ways with. The A8 660K Richland, if you wanted to pair it with the 6670, which is essentially the highest AMD graphics card you can pair it with and still get some benefit. If you go higher than that, it's going to disable the GPU on your Richland. Or you could just say, you know what? I don't really need that GPU. I'm just going to save an extra $30 and I'm going to go for the new A10 6800K. Either way, you're really going to enjoy this. I stuck with an MSI FM2 board. This one is compatible. Definitely make sure to upgrade your BIOS. There are some new features on Richland you are not going to be seeing on the old Trinity BIOS. For the mid-range, hey, Haswell is nicely priced. You're not looking at $1,000 chips here. So the 4670K was the lowest unlocked processor that they have, which, honestly, if you're going to play, if you're watching us, you like to play with your computer, you want an unlocked part because Haswell, if it's not a K version, is very much locked down. I paired that with the MSI Z78 G43 because it has a ridiculous amount of output ports on it. It is honestly one of the most versatile motherboards I've seen in a while. The Double D HD 7870 GHz edition is probably going to be gone tomorrow because, as we were talking about earlier, for an extra $40, there is a much better graphics card out on the market. For the high-end board, Ivy Bridge is out, Haswell is in. I went with a new motherboard. It wasn't one that we've seen from Mori yet. It was the Asus Z87 Expert, which is a little bit better than the Pro. It's, again, got an obnoxious amount of SATA 6 gigabit ports, lots of USB 3, Thunderbolt, which is sort of the biggest thing, because a lot of the motherboard manufacturers didn't go Thunderbolt until they hit the high end. So, for right now, Thunderbolt does give you a lot to play with if you want it, and it does sport a lot of golden bling because that's a new Asus thing. One day, we might see another Dash E processor. We might see another dual CPU socket. But until then, Dream System is kind of going to float around. If you can find a 79990, if you can find a 690, if you can find a Titan. Really?
You can find a Titan.
Yeah, and honestly, right now the Titans are more available than the other NVIDIA or the AMD dual GPU.
Well, what about the GTX 780? I mean, that's essentially a Titan with half the memory and a couple of SMXs disabled.
Yeah,
and you're
but
paying
it's still not quite as fast. So if you're going for the dream, you got to reach for the sky.
Right. Reach away.
Yeah. Because I can't do it on my paycheck, I tell you.
We never talk about frame rating around here. And in fact, frame rating is probably Ryan's most favorite thing to do in the world. Sit at his desk hour after hour and frame rate those parts. But anyway, AMD is finally going to release a new driver that will include the frame metering that we have so been wanting for so long and fix the Crossfire graphics. At least get it on to a level near of what NVIDIA has with SLI. So that is July 31st, which is oddly enough my birthday. So
happy birthday, Josh.
Well, it's
you
not
go
my
back
birthday
to Crossfire
yet.
Again.
No.
Oh.
Hey, Josh, you know what else that is? It's also the day before QuakeCon starts.
It is. So I guess I'm going to be traveling. And you're bringing liquor to QuakeCon, right?
Oh, I'm bringing in liquor, all right.
All right, we'll have some liquor.
Gonna start shopping this weekend.
Nice. But anyway, AMD is releasing those July 31st. Keep your eyes peeled. I'm sure that Ryan will have been diligently working on his frame rating test bed to see how well these drivers produce as compared to what NVIDIA has in both software and hardware form. And moving along, well, I guess I can take this one as well. Intel not releasing 14-nanometer Broadwell CPUs next year. Haswell and Haswell E will dominate in 2014. Something we've talked about here before, obviously, is process technology. And I was actually quite surprised that Intel was able to move to 22-nanometer Tri-Gate as quickly as they were, given the challenges that particular process had. It went swimmingly for them. They released Ivy Bridge. They've now released Haswell. And they have millions and millions of chips out on this 22-nanometer process. Well, we were supposed to get to the 14-nanometer Tri-Gate process next year, and the first example was going to be Broadwell. It was going to be a BGA-only part, so that means no LGA, no swapping in motherboards. It's going to be a CPU that will be soldered to a motherboard or a notebook. It's going to be the first 14-nanometer part. And it seems that Intel is having issues moving to 14 nanometer. And this is not surprising because if you look at the rest of the industry, they're still sitting at 28 nanometer for the majority of their products. We are really only hearing about test wafers coming at the 22 and 20 nanometer spots. They're talking big about 16 nanometer XM, I think, what Global Foundries is. It's a more power optimized process at 16 nanometer, but we have none of these parts out yet. Nobody has made the jump to 22, 20 nanometer other than Intel, and Intel was really hoping that next year they could get to this 14 nanometer node. Well, it seems like it's just a bridge too far. I mean, it's the challenges involved in both materials, optics, and overall process tech. It's insane. And so, yeah, we're not going to see that. We're going to see a refresh of Haswell. We'll see the Haswell E coming out probably next fall as they're really high end. And then we're going to have to wait till 2015 to see some new products on their 14 nanometer process. And this gives other guys like ARM, AMD, whoever, a little bit of breathing room because, frankly, they just were not keeping up. And they're going to have a little bit of a window of opportunity to sell some parts. Apparently, I missed a piece. It's the AMD Catalyst for Windows 8.1 released today.
Yeah, but it's Josh Tech, so if you skip it.
It is Josh Tech, and I'm Josh Walrath, your host. Everybody else is fired, so just disconnect from Skype now.
Bye.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, Jeremy, tell us about the AMD Catalyst 8.1.
Well, I mean, hey.
This will take like 15 seconds, so go ahead.
It honestly will. So if you're going to play with the 8.1 release, AMD will be providing you with a brand new driver which you can use, which is actually going to offer some interesting additions like changes in YUV format ranges for if you're actually encoding video. Wireless display is going to get a bunch of upgrades, although it's Miracast, not HSA, which I thought was a little bit odd. And I would really love to know what aggressive VSync interrupt optimization is. So if you're running Windows 8.1 and you download this, call the 800 line. Let us know how aggressive the VSync interrupt optimization is.
I wonder if that's kind of the internal frame rating that, hey, I want, even though I'm running at 60 hertz, I want 50 frames per second.
And
that
it
seems
sounds
pretty
like
aggressive.
it, but at the same time, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I want to find out.
Whatever it is,
Ken, load it on the new MacBook and find out.
it's aggressive.
I'm more interested in this little item that Scott wrote this, pointed out. Skype/Link video conferencing acceleration.
That's just what we need is to upgrade our Skype to the newest version, which supports it.
Yeah, so enjoy that 8.1 upgrade there, Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ken, can you handle the Lenovo launches new Haswell-powered Windows 8 devices, or do you know what this one is about? If not, you can pass it on to somebody else.
I'm going to have to take a pass on this one.
Oh, who's got this? Alan, Jeremy?
I can quickly grab it.
Has anybody actually read the website? Because obviously I have not.
No.
Wait, we have a website?
What website?
Exactly. It's joshtech.com.
Yeah.
That's where I've been going. I haven't seen anything new posted.
It's been a while.
Out for
Yeah.
years.
It's just some old screenshots from Penn Starsis,
Mm-hmm.
but still, you know. No, Lenovo came out with essentially 4 different new models. You can get a convertible tablet, which in this case they actually went for the keyboard being a case as opposed to a dock. So you're not going to get any more battery life out of docking it. And in this case, you're looking at a dual-core Intel Atom, 64 internal flash storage, and the usual stuff that you'd expect, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and 3G. So, you know, it's a tablet at 1366 by 768, which honestly, for a 10.1-inch tablet, is kind of awful. But hey, $500, cell-capable, GPS, Wi-Fi. It's going to be interesting to see if the mix sort of takes off. I've always been a fan of the dockable ones as opposed to the case, but at the same time, this might work. But on top of that, you've got a refresh to their S series. You've got the S210, the S400, and the S500, which, you know, as you might expect, grow in size. You got an 11.6, you got a 14-inch, and you get a 15.6-inch. For the S210, the 11.6-inch one, you're looking at a Core i3, again, past generation Ivy Bridge. For the other two, you can actually go with i5s, which, you know, are going to offer some serious upgrades. You can also get discrete NVIDIA graphics in both of these. Both of them are under $600. One's about $500, one's about $580. Overall, you know, it's a nice refresh to the S series. On the other hand, it's nothing groundbreaking. We've seen the Lenovo S series for a long time, apart from being very glaringly white. It's more or less what we've been seeing. Then they decided to go slightly different. They offer a U330 and a U430 Touch. So these are Ultrabook class, and technically are because they're under $1,000. But these are touchscreens. On the other hand, if you can take a look at the picture that Ken is showing you, there is something missing from the bottom of the base. There is no touchpad. You have the pencil nub navigation.
Yeah, there is.
And you have a touchscreen.
Yeah, I
There's
see a
touchpad
very
there.
little
Is
tiny
it?
square
Okay.
there.
It's just a
Well,
really
it's actually
the
a
other
big
one?
square.
It's just a
Oh,
bad
I'm
angle.
sorry. This is the other one. I'm thinking of a different one that was just released, but there is one that dumped it strictly for touchpad. This one actually isn't too bad. It's got a 10-point multi-touch. I think I was thinking of the Acer that comes along with, or the Samsung. But so in this case, yeah, you're looking at an i5, up to 8 gigs of RAM, a decent battery, upgrades of storage to 256 gigs for an SSD, or in some cases you can pair. So like seriously cheap end 16 gig with a 15 gig hard drive, or a 256 SSD alone, or maybe you want to mix and match and go stick with the 16 gig for just your OS and a terabyte hard drive. It's a different way for Lenovo to go. Honestly, this whole touchscreen thing is relatively new to the market for mass marketing. Unfortunately, one problem with these is if you want a 1080p display, that will be an expensive upgrade. They do not ship that way. One ships at the old disappointing 1366 by 768. The other slightly better at 1600 by 900. But honestly, should not everything have a 1080p display by this point?
Yeah, sure.
When they're shipping cell phones with them, it's kind of disappointing to not have it on your phone.
And this is what I'm thinking. Like even tablets are significantly higher pixel count than this.
I'm not one to talk, though. My laptop is 1366 by 768. Oh.
And it's an Apple product, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Retina screen for you.
Anyway, moving along. Samsung reveals 2 new Windows 8 ATIV tablets. Now, one is a convertible based on Haswell. The other is a 10.3 tab that is based on Atom. So if you look at the pictures of these things, Ken, one is that nifty convertible. It's a 13-incher. You can slap it in between notebook form
Various
and
things.
then flip that thing around and do tablet. And unlike the Lenovo Yoga, you're not going to bounce the keyboard around on the ground and collect all that dog hair that I have in my house. The tablet.
And this is the one that doesn't have the touchpad on it.
No, that does not have the touchpad on it because it is touchscreen enabled. The tab looks kind of nice. It's again that white piece of plastic with a big screen. The resolution is again 1366 by 768, so it's not retinal or retina, whoever you want to talk to. 10.1 is decent. You've got the Z2760 SoC, not incredibly impressive, but decent nonetheless. This is what the Bay Trail Plus, I believe, from Intel. So you're going to have okay performance. It's not going to be Silvermont by any stretch of the imagination. It may not even be Jaguar based, but it's going to be okay. So Samsung keeping us in the loop with what they got. What else do we have? Gainward GTX 780, otherwise known as Titan 1/2 memory and minus some SMX units. Features one really large heatsink and a factory overclock. We're going to be seeing so many of these stinking cards come out in the next couple of months. It's going to be fabulous. Look at the size of that heatsink. I think that there are 3 fans behind it. Taking one of those things apart and cleaning it out must be a giant pain. But well worth it because 780 seems like it's a decent product. Speaking of more products, Palette, whatever you want to call them, they have a GTX 780 Super Jetstream. Not Super Pipes, Super Jetstream. Triple fan Jetstream cooler. Look at those coolers. Look at those fans. You got the nice kind of bronzed effect around that center fan.
Oh, that's copper, man.
Okay, copper, but it's Jetstream.
Yeah.
It's going to be cool. And you can have up to, 1033 megahertz boost on a GTX 780? That's not bad.
Yeah, and
So,
it probably
should
sounds
be
like a
a,
jet
nice
taking
little
off
clock
when
card.
it's
What's
just
that?
100% too.
What?
What?
I didn't hear you.
No, I don't think
said-
it's going to quite sound like a jet. Honestly, I think they've done a semi-decent job on this. From what I've seen, it's actually quieter than the reference one.
Well, it
Although
probably
when it
is
first
that the one
boots,
with the
maybe
100?
not.
Is that the one with the 100 millimeter fans on it? There was one I saw that had 100 millimeter fans.
No, I don't think it's this one. But it could well be. No, they're 80 millimeters.
Yeah, they're
With
8.
center-mounted 90 millimeter.
Oh.
Oh, well, that's not
So it's a
bad.
bigger center, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jeremy, we have had more than our fair share of GTX 760 releases this month.
Yeah, I will
Wait.
quickly run through them.
Quickly.
Because honestly, there are more than a few. And hey, anyone who's been upset that, we've been seeing a lot of just reference launches, reference launches.
Launches.
Guess what? The 760 is not going to be reference. I swear I have not seen a reference card launched. So you got Galaxy, which is spitting out their GTX 760 and the 760 GC, which are significantly overclocked. It's in where most people have aimed for, where you're looking at a boost speed of... Good lord, that's not the one I was looking for. What's the Asus one? The boost speed, they're looking at about 1.072 gigahertz max boost, and video memory just a hair over 6 gigahertz. It's all about the reference coolers. So with Galaxy, you have sort of a Batman-looking pair of fans, which are going to be interesting to sort of see because at the same point, you've got this force air bracket, which is relatively new to Galaxy, and as far as they're concerned, is actually going to be really good because they're putting it on everything that they've got. From Asus, you've got one of your favorite Josh's, the DirectCU2. The 760 has come out. It's got that same look that we're all used to with the heat pipes to the left, right, and center. And
But it looks more edgy this time.
it's a little more edgy. Along with that, you've got Gainward. Again, we just covered this card, except in a slightly larger 780 series. So you've got the same sort of an idea of a cooler. You've got only 2 fans because, hey, this is a slightly smaller card than the 780. Next up is one of my favorite, Zotac. Much maligned, very orange, but their amp editions are usually incredible. They're usually relatively well priced. They're maybe a little bit louder than some of the other custom coolers, but honestly, the factory overclocks are already insane, and they didn't push them. You can go much higher with the Zotacs than you can with a lot of the other ones. From there, we're on to MSI, another red and black themed. This is, I believe, is the one with the 120 mil fans. Or no, sorry, these are 100
No,
mil as
100.
well. But they
Still,
honestly
that's big
do
for a
look
mid-range card.
They're huge. So at the same time, these are
Do
low
they
RPM
spin
fans.
counterclockwise?
One would hope,
No.
and
No.
you
but
might even be able to
unfortunately-
spin them backwards to blow the dust
But
out.
you tune in Tokyo.
Oh man, you ruined the signal. And honestly, I think that very quickly takes us, unless I missed Gigabyte, which I should not do, because Gigabyte went triple fan. A slightly lower turbo speed, same RAM speed, but this is going to be significantly quieter. This also has a fan hanging off the end of the card, which honestly you don't see very often. But this is the old WindForce. We've all seen the WindForce for many a generation now. And honestly, as far as you video card reviewers go, this is one of the more quiet implementations of a third-party cooler.
Nice. Very nice. Yeah, you're going to be able to pick these up pretty much anywhere, anytime, because, again, GK104. Cheap as chips.
Somewhere between $250 to $260.
Yeah. Alan, can you tell us that hopefully you have had chickenpox already? Otherwise, you might want to skip shingled HDDs.
Yeah, okay. So, this is weird. So, for hard drives, as in the mechanical type, I know we talk a lot about SSDs lately, but the mechanical ones are still out there. There are still ways to get more data crammed onto mechanical magnetic media. And this shingling or shingled approach thing that's been in the news this past week is just another way of doing that. So basically it's like this. You can write at a certain width to a hard drive. The track that you write has to be a certain width. But you can actually read a much narrower, based on the current tech, right? To when you write to it, it's going to be a certain track width. That's basically limited by the manufacturer, like how they can make the write head on the drive. But you can read much narrower. So if you do this shingled thing, the concept is that you are writing from, say, hard drives generally write from out to in, from the outer edge of the platters towards the inside, right? Works sort of like a record. So imagine if you did that, but instead of shifting the head over by one complete track width, you shifted it over by only a half. So you know you have to write X amount of width no matter what. Like you're going to magnetize a certain width with however they made the head, right? So if you do that and you only shift it over half that distance, well, now you've theoretically written twice as much data to the disk. The catch is that when you read it, you're only reading the half of the track that was left over. You get that? That makes sense?
No, I'm lost, but go ahead.
Because you overwrote half of the previous track, since you only shifted it over half. Okay? So you sort of overwrite half of what you just wrote, half a distance before it. It's kind of confusing. But so this works. It does work, but there's a lot of catches and gotchas to it. You pretty much have to write the disk sort of like roll back to CDRs, right? You had to write it like across, front to back, and you can only add stuff on to the end. And if you wanted to sort of rewrite something in the middle, you had to sort of like start over. Because you can't really, you can't sort of just stick something in the middle there. Because you're overwriting half again every time you go across. So you're pretty much guaranteeing yourself, you're forcing yourself into, if you write the hard drive sequentially from the beginning of the disk all the way to the end of the disk, then you can get away with doubling the capacity or greater that you wrote to the hard disk. But if you can't just random write somewhere in the middle once you've done that.
So a pretty narrow usage.
Well, I think it does have a good usage. I think it could catch on, but it would be more of a data center sort of thing. It would be, here's your huge data center RAID stack that's designed for the backup of the solid-state-based array. And you let the solid-state stuff do all the random access stuff and all the real-time access and whatnot. But you need to back that up somehow. And this would allow you to have fewer disks in that pack of disks that's, doing that job, basically.
It's something good to hold off until Hammer is available.
It's basically, the way I would think about it is it's sort of like tape backup-ish, but using hard disks.
Interesting.
Right? And the reading back from it can still be random. You're not paying out through a tape and trying to figure out, where it is. So once it's backed up, you could still have random access, complete regular hard drive style random access as far as you're doing reading.
Because, access time for tape is so awesome.
Yeah, that's horrendous, right? So at least it would have an edge on it for this. And you could definitely get some really good densities, right? Imagine, we're already at 4 terabytes on most hard drives. This could, in theory, they could flip a couple of firmware switches, and you could get to 8 terabytes without really changing the tech. You're just sort of narrowing the gaps on the tracks, and you're overwriting. It's just basically a software implementation, from what my understanding is of it. So very minimal. There's the more drastic changes that would have to take place is that on the software side and the interface side, like how you have a hard drive that's there, and you can't let the operating system randomly write to it. See what I mean? You'd have to have something sort of like the software that drives tape systems that understands that you can only write to it in a huge sequential swath, right? This would have to do the same kind of deal.
So Backup Exec is getting really excited about this technology.
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, I hate those people.
Yeah.
Moving along, Maury, tell us about the ROG Maximus 6 Extreme and what they've done at Computex.
Computex had an overclocking competition, and apparently the Maximus 6 Extreme scored very well. I believe it won 10 awards. They were able to get a Haswell to just over 7 gigahertz using 3D Mark 2001 of all things. He scored almost 200,000 points, which is insane. They also did 05 and 06. They were able to get the more impressive thing is the DDR3 clock speed. They were able to get DDR3 running at just shy of 4,000 or 4 gigahertz, which the exact speed was 3.957 gigahertz they were able to get, and that was at 13, 16, 1645 timings. That's pretty amazing, considering that 3,000 megahertz memory just started hitting. These overclocking things. To get it to 7 gigahertz, you need to have LN2. They probably disabled hyperthreading. They disabled cores. They were probably running
they
one
had
or two
physical cores, no hyperthreading.
Yeah. There's a lot of tricks they do to get that high speed. So that's not something they basically get the system stable. Try to get the system stable for maybe a minute or two, long enough to take benchmarks and screenshots. And there's a minimum amount of time that they have to have it stable so that it counts. It's not viable for every day, but it's kind of a neat thing to play with.
Yeah, because, all of us have an unlimited supply of LN2. It's piped into our house. It's like water. No?
No.
Yeah, it comes in with a natural gas.
Guess that's just me. Anyway,
You.
moving along, away from the ROG. The Verge had an interesting article about how the latest two big consoles, the PS4 and the Xbox One, both utilizing AMD APUs, will turn x86 into gaming nirvana. And I think that The Verge is perhaps being a little bit more optimistic than they should be. Because while moving to all x86 development, 64-bit is a good thing for games, there's still going to be porting issues. Because as far as I know, PS4 is OpenGL-based, Xbox One is DirectX-based. You're still going to have some interesting porting issues now and then. Now, the nice thing is that they both have, as the base CPU, the 8-core Jaguar processor. Neither of these are fully HSA compliant, but they do utilize the Huma memory system. So they've got kind of a flat address space. They've got good bandwidth in between the memory, CPU, and GPU cores. And especially in terms of the PS4, it's running on a very high-speed GDDR5 256-bit bus, and they're getting just tremendous numbers out of there. So it's a little bit more powerful on that side. The issue is that you've got this 8-core processor. It's running at 2 gigahertz. So they're going to really have to optimize how they do threading to be able to get the most performance out of this particular part. Now, this is not a bad thing for AMD because if you look at their top of the line FX 8320, FX 8350, they're both 8-thread parts. And so if we see an optimization of the engines and some of these games that can handle 8 threads, then we're going to see some pretty good performance. I think for the most part, we probably are going to see developers utilize a lower number of those threads because if we've looked in the past Xbox 360 and PS3, especially on the PS3, they did not utilize as many threads as they potentially could have, but that was more design issues of what the Emotion Engine, can't remember what they call the CPU of that. For the Xbox 360, it was PowerPC architecture, in-order processing with 6 threads, so it's 3 cores, each handle 2 threads apiece. And so they had to do some mixing and matching to get the best performance out of that because, as you know, a lot of in-order architectures are not the most efficient when it comes to per clock performance and per watt. But, they're decent for the time. There's going to be definitely a learning curve with these new products, and it may have a positive effect on PC gaming, but there's still going to be a lot of recompiling from the consoles to the PC, and some of those optimizations may be kind of lost in the wind. What are some of your other thoughts, Jeremy?
It's a total win for AMD. Hey, all of a sudden I want to support console gaming just because AMD is going to be getting money for every console sold on the planet when this next generation comes out. They could use the cash.
Whatever, man. NVIDIA has Ouya. That's going to be the real console.
Ooh.
Well, I hate to say it because, for retro stuff, the Ouya actually does look a little kind of attractive. On the other hand, I can buy mini MAME things. They just plug into the TV and I can play the old games. But I just love to see that, hey, AMD has made a huge win on the console portion of the marketplace, which is going to suck for a year or two. After that, all of a sudden it's going to be so cheap to make those CPUs. They're going to be making us so much more profit. It's a good thing for AMD. I don't know about good thing for gamers.
Well, AMD's not going to be actually producing the chips. They've licensed those.
They've licensed them, but they're going to still get pennies.
They're going to get royalties per chip, yeah.
You know who could be a big winner out of this is the indie game developers. It really depends on how open Microsoft and Sony are to them. Because right now, you have mostly
Microsoft
Steam
is so
driving the indie
demonstrably
development.
open right now.
I'm sorry?
Microsoft, so demonstrably open right now.
Yeah, I know.
In cheek.
But I mean, the thing is, if they actually allow indie gamers access to the consoles, that's going to be huge for them. Because now all of a sudden, I mean, indie gamers make huge money off of Steam, but imagine the money, and that's a small pond. Imagine the money they'd make off the consoles if they were allowed in there. And for them, porting is going to be nothing. They can write the game for PC and it'll run on the consoles with some optimizations for controllers rather than keyboard and mouse. So that's a huge win for the whole indie gaming community if it works out. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of questions there. Something that we will be exploring in the future as these consoles are physically released to us. We get to see the cross pollination of the typical Windows desktop x86 and the latest consoles. So it's going to be what Xbox One is November.
They'll both be November. Yeah.
That's going to be interesting to see, especially the Sony PS4. I mean, last generation PS3 did not really impress me all that much, other than having a Blu-ray drive. Technically, they had problems with the cell processor in there. Sure, it could handle up to 7 threads, but 6 of those were for SPEs, and with bandwidth contention, you could only run 2 to 3 of those at any one time. So yeah, they had some issues. Microsoft is a little bit better. But still, it's a fascinating time. Any kind of change of this magnitude is going to bring about some interesting things. And it's time to move on to the hardware, software picks of the week. I believe that Ryan is choosing the Delta Air industry, one of the largest airlines in the entire world, who has screwed up his travel plans seemingly ad nauseum since he left Kentucky.
Hey, now wait a minute.
Last week.
Those
It's the
guys
personal touch.
Those
What?
guys will show up on time, even if it means leaving half of the airplane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But don't ask them how to close the door on a 767. They apparently can't figure that one out.
They can't do that. Well, you know what? Ever since I saw photos of that 747 that was around Hawaii from United,
Oh, God.
the door was not entirely closed, and some people got the scenic trip to the ocean. Yeah.
No.
Closing the door is a rather large and important thing to do on a modern airplane. So yeah, that's Ryan's choice. He loves Delta and the Sky Miles.
Highly recommends
Sky
it
Pesos?
to anyone. Anyone who wants to fly to Europe.
Sky Pesos. And what's the special club that Delta has that only he gets to go to and you get left out in the concourse?
Actually, he gets a guest pass. So.
It's the Long Mile or something like that.
Sky Club.
Sky Club.
I appreciate America's name, which is the Admirals Club. Sounds like a pretty seedy place, actually.
Yeah. Jeremy, tell us about your pick of the week.
Oh, God, this week I have nothing.
Even though
It's
you're
been
the number
insane.
2 man at JoshTech.com,
But, hey.
let's hear your pick.
Ah,
Huh? Move it.
and it will be very quick because I really have nothing this week. If you're ever stuck with trying to support somebody remotely that is not capable of downloading and installing a program, and I know that most of you have run into this, join.me. Once you can convince them that join.me is actually an URL they can type in, they don't need to type in join.me.com, as long as they can read you, and it is based off of LogMeIn. Once they can read 6 letters and numbers off of their screen, you can actually connect. They don't have to install anything. They don't have to have admin privileges. As long as the computer mostly boots, you should be able to help that wonderful family member that you care about greatly.
Wow. I need that so badly, it's not even funny. I didn't know
It's
that
not bad.
existed. Join.me.
I thought people knew about this.
No.
Okay, well, hey, join.me. It's not as bad a pick as I thought.
Way to go, Jeremy. You saved me many, many hours of frustration.
No, you're still going to have those hours of frustration.
Oh,
You're just going to be
guess
on the
you're right.
computer while you're doing it.
Yeah. All right, for me, this is something a little bit off the beaten path, but got to discover this one today. GoPlot. It's been around for quite some time. If you are in any kind of professional organization which requires plot files from MicroStation, AutoCAD, whatever, this is a nice way to automate printing of a large amount of files. MicroStation is exceptionally unfriendly when it comes to plotting to actual installed printers. You need to go to plot files. So with GoPlot, it takes those plot files, prints them out nicely. You can adjust a lot of the things like line widths, whatnot, and it's free. So yeah, anybody who has to deal with engineering kind of crap, this is a nice little program to have. It works.
And it's from Noli2Bear?
Yeah, whatever. But it works, and it's free. Alan.
Yeah, so we like this iFixit stuff, like tools and stuff. Those are those guys that rip stuff apart all the time, and they sell tools to do the same sort of thing. And I know Ryan and myself have recommended the micro bit set thing in the past. It's like a screwdriver set with a bunch of little bits to it. And actually, there's Ken's holding it, and it's like that's actually the pimp daddy version of it that comes with a bunch of spudgers and extra stuff. But you can order just the bit set. It's like $30. That gives you
And
the
yet
crazy.
you still can't take apart an SSD.
Well, that gives you the crazy small Penelope screw bits and all the other stuff, right? But if you want to do some other kind of stuff, what I found on their website recently is the macro bit set. Now, I mean, there are versions of these little, it's just a regular quarter-inch socket style bit set, but their set has more bits in it and of different varying types than anything I've seen. Even more so than like the kind you can get at like Harbor Freight and the other random kind of tool suppliers that have like pretty complete sets. You would think this has more than those even. So I think that's pretty much every possible thing is all in there. It's like how many are in the thing? It says it on the thing somewhere. Where is it?
It says it on
About
the thing.
128 bit or so.
97 different 97 different style things. So it's like every, metric, hex security, SAE, Allen head, security based ones and splines and all sorts of other, everything. Pretty much everything. Like anything that's bigger than the ones on the micro bit set, this will probably fit.
Order
and probably
it
some stuff
now.
on your car and everything else.
You could probably save the Titanic with this bit set, but it wasn't around in 1914
Maybe, yeah.
or 12.
Yeah. So, and another side note on the 1st of next month, starting the 1st of next month, which I think is Monday, they're doing this thing called iPhone Liberation Week, which is where they'll send, like, I don't know, it's like a few thousand people or something. I guess you just have to like sign up with them or create an account with them or something. They'll send you, I think, 2 iPhone Liberation kits. So what that is it's a kit that has regular Phillips head screws to replace the Penelope screws if you have an iPhone.
And for you Americans, by the way, AT&T is doing half-price sales if you're willing to sign your life away for 2 years. So you can pick up a
Half-price
brand new
on
iPhone
what?
for about $100.
It's half price
Oh,
on any phone. It's not just the iPhone, I believe.
Oh no, it's any smartphone.
Yeah,
Wow.
which is nice.
That's pretty
Yeah,
good.
they're losing
Yeah, I
market
support
share
a lot
big time.
of Americans with smartphones in my day job, and yeah, they all really love this sale right now. Or you could always go for the S4, which is the same bloody price, $100.
I will say this. T-Mobile, actually, I'm pretty impressed with how they do their iPhone thing. I don't know if anybody's
It's
logged
not
into
bad,
it.
but we're moving away from.
No, right, but
their
I just like the
coverage
way
is-
that they
not
do
the
it. They're basically
HTC
like,
One.
they're
Sorry.
basically like, this is how much
I have
you're-
had to send
they're-
back so many of those bloody phones because they're all broke.
Really?
What?
Huh.
If you use them as a phone.
Huh.
If you don't use them as a phone, you'll never know. Second you try and make a call on those things, I have had people with like 4 or 5 bad ones in a row.
You're talking about iPhones?
No, HTC One.
Oh, no. I'm talking about like their iPhone specific plan. Because
No,
it's
somebody
basically
in the
like,
chat room mentioned that.
they're, I
That
just like how they're
phone is
upfront with
making
it.
my life hell.
Basically, if you have an AT&T, if you're on AT&T, right, and you get a phone through their contract, and you're paying whatever the premium is that pays off the phone after a couple of years, right, and that's in
Oh, yeah.
there. They don't tell you that it's in there, but it is, right?
Hey, it's still cheaper than Canada.
Well, true, but if you don't get a new phone after the 2 years, you're just still giving them the extra money, like
Well, then you're an idiot. Get the new
for
phone.
right. So that's what I like about T-Mobile is that they're very upfront. They're like, okay, pay us this much upfront, and then the rest is like $20 a month for the next whatever, and that totals up to the cost of the phone, like for an iPhone especially, right? And then they say at the end of that, then that extra $20 a month falls off, and they're just like, okay, so you're done paying us for the phone, so don't pay us for the phone anymore, and your bill gets $20 a month cheaper. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. None of the other carriers are that transparent about that.
But then you're on the
T-Mobile's
T-Mobile
kind of,
network.
second hind tit in terms of market share right now
Oh, hell
and
yeah.
the coverage. So
True.
yeah, they kind of need to do something else, but it would be nice to see everybody else do
I mean,
this
come
kind
on.
of behavior.
Verizon is so bored. They're trying to take over Canada now.
Yeah. Verizon. That's who I've got. They've got the best coverage in the U.S., unfortunately.
Yeah, they've got the best
True.
coverage in the U.S., but the worst business practices.
Yes.
Yeah, they're the worst amongst a giant pile of fertilizer.
Yes. All right, Maury. Finally, we get to the man, the machine, the orange ball chasing legend.
Yeah, my pick isn't hardware or software. It's more a website. I've been doing, as I've said a few times, I'm getting my QuakeCon build ready. I've been doing a lot of sleeving, crimping, everything. I came across. I've done sleeping before. I came across this website when I was just looking for facts on sleeping.
Hey, when you saw
and-
the quality stripping tool, did you go da da na 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 na
No, sorry, Josh, no. But
No?
Lutro
You're
basically
boring.
he started out doing a bunch of video facts on crimping and sleeving, and he he had a collection of tools that he recommended, and he at first was pimping for you guys who know about sleeving. You've probably heard of MDPC. That store, it's a German-based store. They have very high-quality tools, but they're very expensive in the U.S. So he opened his own store and basically is making tools the quality of MDPC available in the U.S. Shipping rates are decent. I think cost $6, and it'll ship at USPS usually. His prices are pretty decent. You can get a MDPC quality crimper for about $50, which isn't bad. He's got he's got a lot of different styles. He's got the paracord available. He's got the MDPC sleeving. He's got any tool under the sun that you would need, including paracord, the paracord sleeving tool. He's got the crimp terminals. He's got the male and female Molex plugs. It's a really nice storefront, nice collection of stuff. He does sometimes the store runs out of quantity of stuff. So you just have to bear it with them. And he's got a lot of facts. He's got a lot of video FAQs available for everything from crimping to sleeving. It's just a really nice thing. I've spent a little bit of money there over the past few months. So,
Or you're getting way too excited about sleeving, man.
And Ken is scratching his head because he's never seen a PATA cable. He's just used to the SATA ones.
I have a whole drawer full of PATA cables. God, no. I'm as I've said, I'm doing a lot of
PATA does not exist.
Projects. But hopefully once my power supply mod is done, I can show it off, and you'll see my efforts. But that's it.
Very nice. All right, you know what? We have run exceptionally long, which is a change for especially Maury and me. Yeah, this is episode 257. Can you believe that? We've gone past many network TV shows, and our ratings have only gotten higher. That's kind of a first. Maybe.
Persistence.
But Ryan's not here. And you can get a hold of us at 1-888-38-PC-PER. Leave Ryan a really wonderful message. He'd love to hear from you. Really. Maybe say something about Ken, too. He's kind of lonely. You can get a hold of us at podcast@pcper.com if you got any questions. I know we haven't done those in a while, but it'd be kind of nice to go back and interact with some of our viewers and listeners. Follow us at twitter.com/Ryan Strout, twitter.com/PCPer, or twitter.com/Josh D. Walrath.
Or twitter.com/Delta.
What?
Twitter.com/Delta.
Yeah.
Yes, Delta.
At
Some wonderful, wonderful messages about their airline service to London this week. They've done so well. So anyway, that's it for tonight. I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom.
I'm Alan Malventano.
And I'm Maury Titleman.
Thanks for joining us here at JoshTech.com. And that's Ken. Ken,